Yeah, I spent all day in Tigers. I was shadowing Kevin, so
Oh, is
part
that
of the
you?
Youth Academy leadership program, like we spend one day
Yep.
shadowing somebody. So I spent the day shadowing Kevin. Kevin Lindner in the CFO's office.
Okay.
It was interesting.
I want to shadow you.
No, it was, it was really. But it won't.
Jacob and Katie, I've made you guys co-hosts, so if you can just let people in if there's other people.
Okay, dope.
Can we get started?
Sure.
Do you guys have proposals for us?
We have one.
Okay.
That's all we have today.
We have a few for
We
you.
were hoping that you guys would have some today.
Yeah, do you want to start off with yours?
Yeah, I mean, it's relatively straightforward. I mean, let me email it to you real quick.
Sure.
It's a minor change and you're gonna see I did it a little differently than I have before. There's an area of the language that's bracketed. And the reason that I bracketed it is because I think it may have to change based on what we wind up agreeing on some other stuff, but I'll explain it in just a second. Let me go ahead and send it
You're
to you.
recording?
We've been talking about Article 23 for quite a while. So, I mean, I think that this isn't a huge shift, but I think it'll just kind of be one more thing that's kind of in the done column for the most part.
Mm.
So really, the only thing that was left for us to discuss is whether or not we're gonna specifically include Article 25 in the reference in 23.2. There's a lot of crossouts, but basically our last version that we had received from you was effectively 23.2 was basically CCL. I left the version that it just shows that we had kind of gone back and forth just for the
Right.
record of us doing this, but you'll see that we added 25 in there, which is the substantive suggestion you all had added. What I put in here, the only real change is in addition to adding 25, is I put brackets around 28 and inserted the word regulations. And the only thing that I'm trying to say there is, look,
That's what we mean.
that's the article. If we wind up changing the numbers or something, the one that we want to reference is the regulations article.
That makes sense.
That we are, I think we're, if we're not done, I think we're really close on that one. I think it's on your side right now, but I think it's probably.
We're waiting for all, I do believe it's like, that one's actually on your side.
28.
Yeah,
Yeah, cause we were talking, cause you had a question about like the process for, like reopening articles and I was
Mhm.
I mean,
explaining.
there is something that we want to add to it that it's kind of come up after the Article 9 stuff.
Okay.
But it is on your side, I think.
Yeah, cause you had some clarification questions and then that was it at the end of the last.
Yeah,
session.
March 28th, we gave
Yeah.
you accounts.
So I have one that we put it back across the table on April 11th.
No, you just pulled it up and asked for clarification questions and after we did that, you said, okay, let me come back.
You're
to it."
right, you're right. I apologize. That's my
Yeah.
mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we'll definitely have that one for you guys next week. That's my
Right.
mistake.
Did you send that along?
I did.
Okay.
So like I said, I mean, I don't think there's. a
Yeah, I
whole
mean,
lot-
that's,
there's
this
not a
is the
whole lot to
same,
talk
this is
about.
the same as what we,
Effectively,
yeah.
It's effectively
Okay,
the
that's
same. So, you know, maybe one more that we can sort of mark is effectively mostly kind of done.
Okay. Okay, so I just sent you ours.
Okay.
We have 4,
Okay, where do you
and
want
I'll just go in chronological order. Or numerical, rather.
You have paper copies today?
Yes. So, need to bring my mouse.
I have a blue pen, I'm just gonna use it.
Maybe. So yeah, this is essentially putting back across to you,
Article 3.
more or less the same,
Okay.
The same proposal as what we gave you last time. I think we've, and you've acknowledged it as well, we've gone a long way to meeting all of the concerns that you've raised to us at the table.
Mhm.
And we also gave you an extra concession in this one, in that we are keeping your strikeout of that at least one consultation must occur after inauguration.
Mhm.
However, the rest of the things, I don't think you guys have really said anything that we aren't addressing in terms of your concerns here. And I think we've been pretty clear about what our position is in terms of this provision is simply to clarify when a meeting with the president, which is already part of the current contract language, can actually happen. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's really anything more to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you've said this before, but I'm gonna ask if you wouldn't mind, if you would just articulating for me in the scenario that as you've laid out here with the parameters that you've described, the purpose of the meeting would be for what? If you would just go ahead and just give me, and I know I've asked you that question before, but if you wouldn't mind going over that again. The purpose of this particular meeting as outlined as you've described would
Right.
be to,
It would be to have a, I think, frank discussion with a person who has an influential kind of decision-making power in the university. About things that are going to affect our employment conditions.
Right.
And not to bargain over them, or even necessarily to have like any, I mean, as you can see in the rules, like, we're not even asking that anything be an outcome of that meeting, right? I think for us, it's important to be able to have that conversation for him or her or whoever to understand what, what our position, where we're coming from on a particular decision, which we feel might affect us adversely or maybe even beneficially. So that's kind of what the purpose of it would be. Yeah.
Like, for example, like, there was some speeches from our current president about like, what was it? It was like, shutting down some department, or like closing down some departments or something. I remember reading an article about it. But this, like, things like that, being able to meet and like talk about that, because that could be something that potentially like affects our employment. Not to bargain over it or anything, but just be able to get more information about like his plans, like in that example, like that would be a good example of something we'd like to have a meeting over.
all right, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, and the next one is gonna be Article 4. So I tried my best to fix the formatting as much as possible.
You're a brave person. I wouldn't have even tried until we were all done.
Well, I mean, essentially what the purpose of what I tried to do, and if you catch anything that kind of doesn't fit with this,
Right.
please do raise it. But what I was trying to do was essentially keep everything, all the track changes are with respect to CCL.
Okay,
And also I have taken out all the strikeouts that like were in the last like 3 proposals, like both teams have basically agreed that.
so
that
agreed
language-
upon strikeouts are removed.
Yes, agreed
Gotcha.
upon strikeouts are removed. So the only strikeouts you will see are either things, your language that I have stricken out,
Okay,
or CCL that one of us has stricken out.
okay.
Um,
Can you tell me which color is the newest one?
There's like
Is that all-
five-
so I'm
It's
sure the
different on
printout
here,
is a
yeah.
different
Yeah.
color.
It is,
from-
that's why,
yeah.
that's why I'm asking.
So I think here, this might be Anna, I believe. I think I'm the red in
Up
this.
there, but
Yeah.
on the printed one, so that would be on this one, the red. up-
I actually don't even have a copy.
Oh,
so,
here. And I know we can check it based on what the last one was. but
Yeah,
just-
yeah.
It'll be,
I will, why don't I just try and check, if you have a question about who said what, I can try and check it just on the document.
gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
There's like 5 different colors.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right, go ahead, start where.
So, and I'll try to give you an overview
Okay.
of what,
The changes are.
yeah, what the changes
That's
are,
fine.
exactly. So, essentially, okay, so we kind of, we've made a kind of a change to how we've approached both the letter of offer and letter of appointment.
Okay,
And I think you know that in our last proposal, we tried to kind of put conditions under which non-renewal, I mean, would essentially be kind of guaranteed unless certain conditions are met, and we were trying to make those conditions essentially the same conditions as they are for terminations
Yes.
and things like that. And part of that was trying to make having a PIP and a bad employee evaluation part of non-renewal for incompetence. Or
is there
rather,
a second page?
I don't think so.
Cause this only goes up to
Oh, yeah.
page 2. I'm pretty sure this is like a 4-page article.
Before,
Maybe
only
not.
print the first
I
page.
might have only printed the first page. I'm so sorry
Oh,
about that.
okay, that's
Yeah,
fine,
this
because
is
it only
not,
goes-
this is not a good one to.
It
not-
only goes to 4.6, and I know, I think it goes to 4.10.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
goes to 410,
Okay.
yeah. I am so sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, my bad.
Well, why don't we go through this and then we'll try to follow it up on here, but if you would then just make sure that we can.
This
get
was
it.
really not the one to mess up on.
It really, it's,
Yeah.
there's a lot of complicated stuff
Yeah.
in here, so.
I'm so sorry.
That's
That-
okay.
Yeah, yeah, let's just try and follow it
That's
on
fine.
here. So. Yeah, essentially, we've consolidated those two kind of provisions into one, and you'll see what I'm talking about
Okay.
the further we go down. But essentially,
Can
where,
you possibly make it a little bit bigger?
Sure,
for
yeah,
my
no
little
problem.
eyes? Thank you.
No worries.
Oh, that's so much better. Thank
okay,
you.
so. Yeah, where we're coming from here is that we want, I mean, both when GAs sign the letter of offer and when they sign their letter of appointment, they expect that to be some type of commitment that the university makes, and they are expecting themselves to have at the very least a job for the next 9 or 12 months.
Mhm.
And most of them are actually expecting it to have it for the next 3 to 5 years or whatever the package it says on the letter of offer. And so essentially where we're coming from here is both of those should mean something as well in the contract. And while we cannot, we accept, that we cannot require that the entire full year package can be guaranteed. You'll see how we've kind of rearranged that section to, I think, achieve some level of job security, which I think is the essential goal for us in this article. So essentially, the main change from your last proposal in 4.1 is here we say that the letter of offer must include this following information.
Mhm.
And similarly down here, we say that the letter of offer must outline the total financial package. And I believe there's some, yeah, okay. And we also removed the phrase here which says that the details are not grievable. And that's because, and we accept your language here saying, although the multi-year financial support is not binding beyond the initial employment period, I also added and the terms outlined in 4.8, and you'll see what that means in a second. But essentially in that article, those were the only changes that I intended. And you can check that with your last
Previous version.
proposal, yeah. In 4.2, I think we've left that the same as before, as your last proposal, I believe. That was the intention at any rate. And similarly with 4.3, I believe, I think we have left that essentially the same as in your proposal. And I'm gonna pull it up on my side just to make sure I'm not mistaken about that. I'm gonna be very confused at the end. Yeah, so I believe it is, okay, no, there is one thing that we reinserted. So actually, this is a reinsertion in, we reinserted this last sentence.
Mhm.
Um. Yeah, again, it's not super important. I don't think I mean, I think you raised the issue with the when practicable
Yeah,
language.
what is the definition
Right.
of practicable? Who interprets it? What is the standard?
Right.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I think, you know, we're willing to, I mean, and you'll see in the next provision. I mean, this kind of declarative statement, like, I mean, I think we're willing to kind of accept that.
got it.
Ultimately, they don't, they don't have any binding purpose, right? And so it's not like the most important thing for us to have that
Got
language
it.
in there. So in 4.4, essentially, we reinserted, so you guys had crossed out, there's no formal limit because you had raised the question of like, what if their academic program
Mhm.
has limits? So we added in, we reinserted that line and added a phrasing, except as set forth by the graduate school. And you guys had figured out this language, which is this kind of, you know, the university recognizes that the
Mhm.
standard is important. I mean, it's fine.
Right.
We don't have to have that in there. Similarly here, you guys had actually stricken out what is current contract language in the current, I believe, 4.3. So we've reinserted that. That's current contract language saying that upon written request, we can be provided information about guidelines and so. Then in 4.4, that's the current 4.4. We've stricken that out entirely because, as you'll see, we are creating a right, interest, and expectancy. So in the following, in the next provision, I think this will make more sense once I explain the changes to appointment section. And I really apologize that I did not
That's okay.
have the printer. So I'll get back to that once we get through 4.8. In 4.7, I believe that's supposed to be that is the current 4.6,
Mhm.
and those changes are our changes, but I think you were okay with them in your last proposal, as far as I remember.
Yeah, I think we've already seen that language.
Yeah. And so in 4.8, that's where like this kind of consolidation of the two different provisions that we had has occurred. So basically, changes in appointment, the idea here is to treat changes in appointments and or rather, a better way of phrasing it is non-renewals and terminations in the same fashion.
Like any
essentially.
change
Yeah.
of appointment
Yeah.
would be covered by this now. just like this one.
And they would be subject to the same criteria, and in 4.6, you'll see the idea was essentially to set more or less the same timeline for them as well. So changes in appointment and reappointments. In terms of A, the intention was to keep it the same as your last proposal. So all I've done there is delete all of the agreed upon deletions, basically.
Okay.
And in B, essentially, the main change there is that I've added, so the current contract language is that appointments may be curtailed, diminished. Any appointment may be curtailed, diminished, or terminated only by the following reasons, and I've added reappointments during the term of the financial package outlined in the letter of offer may be denied, and existing appointments may be curtailed, diminished, or terminated only by reason of one of the following. And those reasons are, continued failure to perform duties, and here's where I've kind of, integrated Jacob's, language in the previous, proposal. Essentially after the provision, and so I crossed out your language as well as part of CCL, which is, the end of that sentence there. So instead of after written notifications, it would be after provision of one, a written performance evaluation indicating deficient performance, and two, a corresponding PIP as outlined in Article 5. Such notifications would be provided at least 60 days prior to the renewal date of the appointment for those on 9 or 12-month appointments, and for those on a semester-long appointments, it should be at least 30 days prior to the renewal date. And then you'll see in terms of the timeline, because this was something you had also raised last time. So again, we're trying to, we put the timeline into the same provision. So instead of reappointment notice, it's notice of appointment and changes to appointment. And A is for the timeline of basically reappointments, and B is for the timeline of when existing appointments are curtailed, diminished, or terminated. So in A, essentially, the first 3 points, that's the same as current contract language. So 9-month appointments will be notified May 15th, 12-month appointments will be notified 90 days before, 1 semester appointments would be notified 45 days before. Then if they are a GA who is being non-renewed due to reasons outlined in 4.8B1, which is for deficient performance, they would receive a notice of non-renewals after the 60-day period of their PIP is over. And that should occur still no later than May 15th for 9-month appointments, 30 days prior for 12-month appointments, and 15 days prior for existing appointments for 1 semester appointments. So essentially, we would keep the same timeline there because it would be 60 days for the PIP, and then 30 days in the 12-month case, and it would be, I think, 30 days for the semester long appointments, and 15 days after that, which would add up to 45.
So it's just putting all the timelines for each of the different appointment types, kind of like on a similar time scale.
So is there a conflict between A2 and A4? Or is A2 meant to contemplate all the reasons apart from the reasons contemplated in A4? In terms of how you've constructed it?
So A4 is supposed to only address when they are being non-renewed due to deficient.
Yeah, so
performance.
4.8B1 is for performance reasons.
Yeah,
And so that 4 is only being non-renewed for performance reasons because we're trying to put in the timeline of the PIP and the written notification
Yeah.
as well.
Can you scroll back up?
yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Yeah, so 4.8B1.
So essentially 1, 2, 3 is for any of the other reasons.
Okay,
And then if they have to be issued the PIP, and the PIP has to be given 60 days so that they have time to improve their performance, then in that case, we have a different timeline.
Right.
Because, I mean, we understand what you were saying last time in terms of like, it can't be like a 5-month timeline, from start to
Right.
finish.
right.
So essentially, we're okay with keeping like from the time that the person is notified that they might be terminated or they might be non-renewed because of bad performance. And until the date when they're actually non-renewed or they actually are terminated. That
Yeah.
timeline should be the same.
Alright, so can you show me if it exists, where do you have the current language from 4.7A? Where does that live in some form or fashion in this proposal? Or is it completely gone? That outlines the reasons for the changes that aren't part of the PIP. I'm sure it's farther down. Maybe we just haven't gotten to it yet.
So in the
Got the
current
other one.
4.7A, that is, those are the reasons that we're.
Okay, can you scroll back down a little?
Yeah. So the 4.8B is the current.
Okay, gotcha.
4.7A.
Okay, because
Yeah.
one is an addition. Okay,
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah,
One is
yeah.
all new.
And then
language.
there's
Okay,
synergy.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
with you now.
Yeah, so there's like a decision tree depending on kind of what your appointment is and.
Well,
what
one
the
is
reason
whether it's
is.
for non-renewal or for termination.
Right.
And then it's for whether it's what kind of appointment you have.
Hmm.
And then it's for whether it's for, whether it's because it's because of bad performance or
Or
for any
something
other
else.
reason.
Yeah.
So this is where I got kind of confused. Maybe you had previously proposed this, I hadn't seen. The new version of B here
Mhm.
contemplates the entirety of the term of the letter of offer as one of the parameters.
Right.
And I don't think we had previously seen that version of this provision.
No, you don't.
Okay, so
You
that's,
had-
that's, new.
That's,
So-
yeah.
and that's where I'm like.
That's,
because-
I mean, I think that's like that's where I was trying to kind of
I got you.
contextualize in the beginning.
Right.
is like,
Right.
Yeah,
Cause the current one talks about a 3-week notice period. That is now replaced with the entire length of the letter of
Right.
offer
Right.
term.
yeah,
That's a pretty significant,
yeah.
that's a pretty significant change.
Yeah, and as I was saying, I mean, that's what I was trying to, again, contextualize
Right,
at the
I got it.
beginning was that.
No, I
That
I
does,
understand.
when people sign that, that is actually what they're expecting.
I understand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's right. I mean, that is a big change from, the existing one. So, yes, I mean, so this part you had seen, but it was in a different form.
Mhm.
And that's why, I mean, yeah. We're trying to make the reasons for non-renewal and termination the same, essentially. So, and then we didn't finish the timeline for the other one. So if you're being terminated or your employment's being curtailed or diminished, then the timeline for 9 and 12 months is 90 days prior to the scheduled change in appointment and 45 days for 1 semester appointments. Then again, if it's due to poor performance, then it would be after the 60-day PIP period. But no later than 30 days prior to the scheduled change for 9 and 12 months and 15 days for 1 semester appointments. So then essentially we would still be sticking to the 90-45 timeline. From the point when they're notified about their bad performance and given the PIP and to the point where they're terminated or curtailed, diminished. Follow. So, yeah, for number 2, academic, failure, that's, I don't think either of us had any changes there.
That's current 4.782. That looks
Yeah.
unchanged.
Yes,
Okay.
that was the intention. For 3, incompetence or misconduct, you guys had crossed out our insertion here and we've reinserted it, I'm pretty sure. Let me just double check. Yeah, that's right. And I think, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if they are truly
Right.
incompetent or there's misconduct, they should. be
And we did
listed.
update the Article 21 to now have where the only like certain actions can be taken and things like that now, limited to scope. So I think it's because of that, it helps to have that in there as well.
So let me ask this, because I do believe I still have, I'm not sure I understand. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm saying I don't necessarily understand. If it's a case of incompetence, how does what is the intention behind, so this 3 here? How does that interact with the language above that contemplates the PIP non-renewal period? Because when I read this, and maybe it's your intention, maybe it's not, that's why I'm asking. Is your intention that we do both progressive discipline and a PIP for people who are demonstrating incompetency? Because when I read 3, it seems like it almost contemplates doing both.
Well, I think it would be no.
I think
Right.
you would have to choose which, I mean,
Right.
because I see the point that you're making, but
Yeah.
that's also a problem with the current contract
No,
language.
I
So-
don't disagree.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree that these are not necessarily mutually exclusive, things.
Right,
But I mean, when the decision is taken that a GA should be non-renewed or that they should be terminated because of incompetence, then that person would have to, like, their supervisor
Okay.
would have to decide, like, what, is it due to option number 3, or is it due to option number 1?
so let me sort of give you a scenario that doesn't match exactly. Let's say that I have a GA, let's say I'm the GA. And my supervisor comes and gives me a letter of counseling based on the fact that I'm not doing something well. And then some time goes on, we meet. he or she observes me, doesn't think I continue to do it well, then gives me a letter of reprimand. And then I continue to not do it
Right.
well, and then they suspend me or they give me a notice of termination
Right.
under this provision. And I say, for sake of argument, you never gave me a PIP. You progressively disciplined me, but you never gave me a PIP. I want a PIP.
So I think, so to answer that then, for three, adding in that insertion and follows the steps of formal discipline outlined in Article 21 would kind of solve that, because it's the PIP, the PIP is not discipline. And that's
Right.
specifically stated in the other articles. So that's, so for when so say if there's deficiencies in performance where no formal discipline was taken,
Mhm.
then it would have to follow the PIP route. But if formal discipline was taken, like they were suspended, things like that, that would follow
This route.
this route for number
Should
three.
there be an or instead of an
Or.
and at some point?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think-
yeah,
I
again,
think-
that's a change to
Right.
current contract language, and
Yeah,
I'm
maybe we
happy
need to
to
make
change
that-
it just to say misconduct,
Right,
right?
so just to be, like transparent, I think.
I mean, I think I understand.
Yeah, just to be transparent, I think now I'm talking through it, I see what you mean, it's just that like, cause I think, I think what it should be, what I think like the intention would be misconduct, not incompetence, because incompetence, I guess, would fall under performance deficiencies. So it should just really be misconduct, which
Yeah.
would be anything else like just behavior, harassment, or whatever else that would fall under discipline.
Yeah,
I think that makes more, right?
That's kind of.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Misconduct is kind of a university-wide standard of
Mhm.
just cause for discipline.
Right.
And
Right.
incompetence usually is kind of like, it's not used very often because
Right.
it doesn't happen very often because most of our employees are good performers, but it's usually kind of
Yeah.
gross poor performance, like it's.
Right.
It's.
Beyond the-
It's like
Negligence,
negligent, it's
right.
not just like,
It's not
it's just not like, oh, I'm just having a bad few months and I'm just
It-
not doing
it
well,
is-
it's,
gets
yeah.
To the point where it's like insubordination, where you're,
Okay.
you've been instructed over and over and over and over again to, that you need to start publishing or something like that. And,
Mhm.
I'm thinking, not like geos don't publish, but not as part of your. job
Or I
requirements,
was
but you know
thinking
what I'm
maybe
saying,
like in a lab
Yeah.
or something, you're being
So,
careless all the
right,
time and like.
right, and I think-
They're
constantly
not
there's
showing
something-
up. I had
Yeah.
a case like that and I remember early
Yeah.
on trying to, was this, which route does this go?
Right.
So I think clarifying that. would be
Right.
good.
Well, and I think part of the difference too is that, well, we haven't gotten through this yet, but if I recall in previous iterations of this, you all were saying that the PIP wouldn't be grievable. And we could, whether or not you decided, whether or not you agreed with whether or not with the university's determination of whether or not the PIP was met, wasn't anything that could be grieved. So in my mind, that's different because incompetence and misconduct can be grieved under Article 21, so there's kind of some different.
So essentially, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for your proposal with Article 5, I think we're okay with a PIP not being required to be given for poor performance, but we do want it to be required if someone's being let go for poor performance.
Right, so I think, and I was just looking through the
So-
Article 21 that we TA'd, and we went back and forth of like adding in the word incompetence and
Mhm.
removing it, and we
We did.
eventually decided on agreeing to keeping it in.
Yeah,
So because of that, maybe, I know we have the definitions article, maybe we can define a competence to be something that isn't just define performance deficiency and incompetence separately, like incompetence, like what we were talking about, like it's negligence or, something that's a lot more than just not performing well. And then we can maybe split that up and then that can clarify between one, because you're right, because in the way it currently stands, technically, a written reprimand is one of the disciplinary actions, and if you do that, then you'd be like, well, I mean, I already followed the formal discipline, so I'm just gonna non-renew you without the PIP or anything else. So, yeah, I think clarifying that would be beneficial in this regard. I think we're on the same page.
yeah, I don't think either of us has put that one, because I think that was one of those, you kind of roll it up at the end. and wanna
Yeah.
Do the definitions almost dead last in case there's anything new that
Right.
we would have to define, so.
Yeah. But yeah, I think maybe, because since we already TA'd Article 21, that's probably what we need to do, yeah.
All right, you can keep going.
Okay, and then lack of funds, so this insertion is actually from you, Patrick, I believe. And then 5 is something that was in Jacob's provision last time, and I think it makes sense. I mean, it probably applies either way, but I mean, it makes sense that voluntary resignation would be a change in, an appointment. So, in case of, 4.8B4, which is lack of funds. This was actually in a previous proposal, two proposals back, but because of, in the mess of all of this formatting stuff, we didn't realize that it had been deleted and we forgot to reinsert it last time. But it was in, I think, two proposals back for us. Essentially, if there's a lack of funds, the university would make every effort to reassign the affected employees for the duration of the term outlined in the letter of offer. Of course, we didn't, at that time, it was framed in the context of the letter of appointment, but we're changed to the letter of offer. And reassignment maybe within or without outside, but must maintain the same stipend. And in the case that that's not possible, offer severance payment equivalent to the original salary to the effective GA for the duration of their current appointment, or 20 weeks, whichever comes first. And they're prohibited to receive this if they've been fired through formal disciplinary process outlined in Article 21. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, my comment is essentially just saying, we forgot to insert this last time. That's our bad. But this provision is in compliance with the statute that actually you had cited to us.
Whichever ends first, not whichever comes first, right?
Whichever
Whichever the period is shorter, is that what you meant to say?
whichever is the period is shorter.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Going.
So, yeah, I mean, for us, that provision is extremely important in terms of actually giving some measure of job security, actually for that commitment that people think that the university is making to them, for that to have any meaningful kind of relevance in the contract. I think that it's essential for us to have that provision. And yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. And then this was an insertion, I believe, that you all were also okay with. Let me just double check.
I'm sorry, can I ask a clarifying question if you don't mind, just going back to that last provision?
Sure, yeah.
So if we provided notice, is the intention to guarantee 20 weeks of pay without work? Is that the intention, the explicit intention? So let's say, for example, if I provided notice of when it was gonna run out, and I gave the notice to be the entire period, which would be longer than the 30 days. Would the intention be that I could expect the GA to continue working for that entire time? Or is the explicit intention to allow for a 20-week period of no work with pay? I guess that's my question.
It would be in the specific case where someone is being let go for no fault of their own. Yeah, that would be, I mean, effectively what would be happening, but that's called severance pay because it's.
I guess that's what I'm saying. So look, this is gonna end on X day. I'm telling you plenty of time in advance. I'm gonna have you continue working here until this is the absolute drop dead day. This is the day we would have let you go, but we're gonna extend it beyond that period. Are you saying, well, look, as long as that person works, we want 20 weeks guaranteed after the last day they physically work on the job? I guess that's my question.
I mean, I think we've given you kind of like an out here in the sense that if the appointment comes first, like then that would come first, right? So if yeah, like if the 20 weeks comes first, then that would be the first. And again, like the 20 weeks is like the maximum that's allowable by the law. I mean, like the specific number of weeks, like if that's what is like, I think the holdup, like I think we're totally like amenable to
Yeah.
having a different.
I did have a
number.
question. Yeah, so you're saying, just on your example, so you're saying like, if they're like halfway like through the semester and you say this is the end, and then you're saying like, instead of working the rest of the semester to the end, it would end in the middle of the semester and then you get 20 weeks with pay and then without working.
My question is more of a practical one, and it's more along the lines of, look, if you want, there's a way that I think we might, because I'm not gonna lie, this is a really tough provision for us to accept. I'm trying to think about if, and I'm not saying we would agree to this, I'm just trying to contemplate if there was an extended period of notice.
Mhm.
And in this case, and I don't know if we would agree to a 20-week additional notice period. Again, I'm just trying to contemplate things that we might be able to work with.
Right.
It's gonna be easier probably for the university to agree to a longer notice period in these conditions, if we can continue to ask the person to work, as opposed to saying, look, say it's a soft money situation, look, we've run out on September 15th.
Mhm.
I'm noticing you that September 15th is gonna be the end. That's when it would have to be. I'm gonna let you know that, but instead of actually having you leave on September 15th, I'm gonna continue to hold you on to for the entire semester, but I'm gonna ask you to actually continue to work for the whole semester. So you've gotten notice of the September 15th period, but then we're gonna continue to pay you and have you work. I'm just trying to see if there's
Yeah.
something there that we could kind of work
I
with.
see what you're
Because
saying.
where it's tough
Okay,
is,
I think I
do you
see.
see, like,
Okay.
there's a difference between extending a notice period and having the person continue to work to give you time to adjust if we can't find you
Right.
something else, as opposed to being like, you're done, go home, I'm gonna mail your check to your house for the next,
Right.
for the next 4 months.
Right, so
Like,
you,
there's a
okay,
significant
so you're saying
difference
that they
between
could
those
have,
things.
that the severance pay that they were given could have been just a regular pay if they were working, cause the severance covers like their normal, the rest of their appointment or something.
Again,
Like
Yeah,
the department
yeah.
finds, there's no more grant funding, but the
Right.
department can find money to fund them through the end of the.
Right, okay, I
Mhm.
think I got it.
in
Yeah.
general, I just think it's gonna be far more palatable for us to increase the notice period and have somebody continue to work than to do something where we're just mailing somebody's check to their, I just, in a sort of a general sense,
You
it's
don't
just,
do that as.
it's just not gonna be something that we're gonna have it's gonna be really tough for us to agree to anything like that.
And I don't know how you reconcile PI losing funds and being able to pay a 20-week severance, like it.
Well, the 20 weeks is just from, we said
Yeah,
it's the
that was just
maximum
the
from law.
maximum.
So I
But
mean,
again,
that
What
can
I'm
be-
saying is that
yeah.
this PI is having economical grant.
Right.
The university is not going to cover that loss. So how is that PI going to be able to afford it?
so, I mean, I think
The
that,
20
that
weeks.
it would be part of their calculation that, hey, if I'm gonna let someone go, actually, I still owe them like 5 more weeks of pay or
Yeah,
whatever.
I-
Like,
5 weeks, it's 5 months.
Well,
yeah, well, again, as I said, like, the exact number of weeks were like.
yeah, that's like, so
absolutely
the or
negotiable
20
on
weeks
that.
is like the maximum amount, but I think in your situation, what would happen is they would fund the GA to work throughout the semester until they really can't like really pay them anymore. And then at that point, if their appointment is curtailed because of that, then the period from that date to the rest, to the end of their appointment is what their severance, what we're trying to get, not like, so in your situation, they would pay the GA up until, they didn't have money for them anymore, but then the severance, and then at that point, then the severance would come into
And I
effect.
just
But
wanna
you-
say something more bigger picture here in the sense that, I mean, the current contract as it currently stands. Makes GAs like the most kind of movable, expendable portion of the academic labor force. Like if you guys were saying like, hey, 3 weeks notice, damn, we can let you go. And so like if we're coming into
Well, we
budgetary
have other
troubles.
employees that get, in the
Uh,
academics that get less notice than that, but that's fine.
Okay, what,
Any of our OPS employees you're done.
Well, that's
the
like
day
an
we tell you.
hourly,
yeah. okay.
yeah,
But there's OPS employees that work in academic fields that.
right, okay.
So essentially what we're saying is that, yeah, I mean, we want some measure of job security and like this is one provision. And I think if the 20 weeks is what is the holdup, like make it 5 weeks, make it 4 weeks. I mean, I don't.
Yeah. Well, I
Uh,
guess really the only, from when you brought up, is that if they couldn't pay, like if they can only pay to a certain amount for the GA to work, and then where the funds would come for the severance after that. I mean, I think that is a problem, but that's,
But also it should be part
It's
of
not
the
the DA.
calculation.
Yeah, it
like,
should
to
be a part
begin
of-
with, like,
yeah.
Right, so
when,
there's probably gonna be fewer GAs hired on those positions. To fill those positions if there's insecurity about the grant funding.
well, I
So
mean,
they'll-
it would be
they'll
like that, it would be like
they'll
that,
hire
it would be like that
OPS or a
now.
postdoc
Yeah.
'Cause they're not
that-
gonna-
it's like that now.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't have, if they're worried about the money, they're not gonna hire a bunch of 12-month DAs that they have to honor those 12-month contracts, like that would be, that would be on their decision whether, how to hire their DAs.
Right, I'm just saying this could be the unintended consequence, is that you have lower those positions that would have gone to GAs going to postdocs or OPS employees.
Or appointments are gonna end way premature to account for the 5 months, which could be.
Yeah.
Do we have any statistics on how many GAs we let go based on
But
insufficient
then at that
funds?
point, they just
Do we
paid
have
to
any-
work, have them work the rest of the
I probably
appointment.
count on one hand if
Yeah.
that. since I've been-
And
I don't
usually,
even know.
the one that I saw, it was way noticed, like probably in fall, and they ended it. Like, I don't know why the grant, some issue, but they timed it to the end of the student's contract.
Yeah.
right?
Got it.
So they had.
Yeah, let's
Ample
let's pull some
It's
actually.
usually
Yeah.
grants.
I just worry
Yeah.
about it having a chilling effect on the hiring of GA, you know, saying like, I don't want, now that this, if the language is in the CBA, that it's gonna make people not wanna hire GAs.
Yeah.
But I mean, the severance also, I mean, financial reasons isn't the only reason for non-renewal, the severance might come into effect, right? Or, I don't know.
This is only for lack of funding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
this
is it under the
this
lack of
specific,
funding? Oh,
yeah.
my bad. Okay, I didn't see that.
that's why.
Well,
Yeah, cause
then,
it
yeah.
kind of contemplates, it kind of contemplates a unencumbered portion of every grant specifically for the purpose of extending the funding of GA stipends. At least, it
Well-
doesn't explicitly say that, but it's implied, if we were to consider this, that we would, and as a matter of policy, we would have to tell anybody who's receiving grant funding to intentionally encumber farther into the future for the purposes of, to support this provision. It would change
No,
practice.
because this is supposed to be up until their appointment, which is like, they're supposed to be paying that amount anyways.
Right, but I think we can all acknowledge the fact that if we give a letter of offer to a GA that's for 5 years, unless that PI who is hiring and to supervise that GA just got a 5-year or longer grant, which I don't know how many of them are hiring
No,
at
so
that
sorry,
exact
the
moment.
severance provision is about the appointment period. It's not, it's just that if this occurs within the period of the letter of offer.
Right,
like-
so.
Like, this provision does not apply, like, say you got 5 years of funding in your letter of offer and you're a 6th-year student now. Like, then this provision does not apply. Like, the point, yeah.
Yeah, so if I'm a one semester appointment, then it's only gonna be for till the end of the semester.
Yeah.
If I'm a 12-month appointment, then it's gonna be for the end of my 12-month appointment period.
Alright, so so let me ask this then, the interaction, your intended interaction between 1 and 2. If we get to the end of 2 and we haven't been able to execute number 1, is the person done, or do they have some sort of like shadow status for the entirety of their letter of offer period?
They would be
No,
Or we
done
have
with
to
seven.
continue.
No, so like, yeah, it's like within the letter of offer period is when like you would be obligated to do this, right? Like either to
Or letter of
reassign
intent.
them or if like, whether you're terminating them within their existing appointment or you're non-renewing them. So like, if you're terminating their existing, appointment, in that case, you would be liable to pay severance for a certain amount of time. You see what I'm saying? And then if that would be received either to the end of the appointment period or the 20 weeks, whichever comes first. And that would be like salary that like they would be expecting to pay anyways, right?
So this would just be ensuring that no matter what, if there's some reason that for the finance, if it's being curtailed for the financial reasons, they'll get funding for the rest of their current appointment. So that's whether it be through the severance or being reassigned.
And at that point, their employment would officially end?
With the severance? I
Yeah,
would-
yeah.
Yeah, they would receive the money for the rest of what they should have been paid for the rest of their appointment period, and then that's it. Yeah.
Only for their appointment period?
Right, for
Yeah.
whatever their current appointment. So if so like 1 month would be or 1 semester till the end of the semester, 9 months, and then 12 months, yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, if they're like, 10 days away from from the end of their appointment, then it would just be the 10-day severance. But if
Gotcha.
they just started their appointment and somehow, then it would go up to like a max of 20 weeks.
Well, I
or-
mean,
yeah.
if all of a sudden the truck comes around the corner, and we
Yeah.
realize all of a sudden. we
Yeah, I
didn't
know,
have the
right?
Money for an entire appointment
I
period, we
know.
just gave them the letter, I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Why would we have done that? Like,
Yeah,
Shame on
so,
us. I
yeah.
mean,
So it's really, so that,
Right.
That's why.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we can move on. I think
Yeah.
we understand.
yeah.
Let me just write a few notes for myself.
In the mouse.
It's
Just kidding.
fine. It's
Sorry,
fine.
I pulled it, you know, if you wanna connect to it. It's Bluetooth, so if you.
You have a,
No, you just.
oh, okay.
Yeah, you have. Bluetooth
Don't
on your
worry,
laptop.
dude, I think we're almost there. I mean, cause
Okay.
now it's just,
I guess not.
you wanna do Article 8?
Yeah, sure.
So the next one is Article 8,
Okay.
and this one I do believe I printed. Although, let me
You printed the
know.
whole thing?
Yeah.
It looks like it goes all the way through 8.
It
looks like
should
it's
have
all-
the signatures at the
It
end
looks
and
like-
it,
it looks like
yes,
the whole
if it
thing.
has the
It looks like the
signature
whole
lines at
thing.
the end, then it's the whole
I think
thing.
it's the whole thing. It looks good. Yeah, I was checking. It's just one page. You got it all on one page. I actually think I cheated the margins on this one last time I sent it to you because it went like just on.
Oh,
And that
yeah.
drives me crazy. So
Yeah,
I like compressed the margin.
You know-
I changed it to 11.2 or 11.3.1.
I think that's what happened with this one, because it was 4 pages long and the signature thing was in the 5th page, and I didn't
Right.
wanna print out the 5th page, and I think I just, when I was specifying the pages, I said 1
1
to
to
2
2 instead
rather
of 1 to
than-
4. That's fine.
yeah.
Um.
So I thought we were pretty close on this one, but
I
last
think we
time
are.
we had some talk about, it was really about,
The bereavement.
bereavement.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's, so the only change that was added here was 8.3A5. That was pretty much the only line. I just moved it down and I just put it underneath the serious health condition and then death of an immediate family member.
And I think you added it
Um,
here as well, right?
Oh, yes, sorry. So for the reasons, so when the paid leave can only be in a second semester, there are exception for 1, 2, or 3, which would have been covered like, the birth of a child or coming
Yeah.
into possession of a child, I guess. And then 5, possession of a child legally, yeah. And then for 5.
I've
it's
never
the-
heard it referred quite that way.
I mean, that's
Legal disclaimer.
that is legal possession of the child. Yeah. But, it would make sense that, I was going back and forth of adding like 4 as well, but I think, that kind of extends a little bit beyond, because originally it was just for like childbirth, but I think, adding in
And I think it,
adding in 5, would make sense, if you start an appointment and you have a death in the family, like, I think they should be allowed access to this paid leave.
Yeah, I think in general, and as I said before, and I think we understand the need to address the concept of bereavement. I
Yeah.
think where we're gonna struggle is to access 8 weeks of leave for bereavement, I think is probably just way beyond the pale compared to what we're giving. other-
Well, I mean, that's also, that's a maximum that's granted between all of those, in my understanding, right? It's not like anytime they take paid leave, they automatically just get 8 weeks of paid leave, like for any of those reasons, right?
The thing I think that's different is that I think practically speaking, I don't want to put a supervisor in the place of having to approve or disapprove a request of an employee who says, look, my immediate family member died, I want to take 5 weeks off. I think that's probably a pretty unusual amount of time off for the death of a family member for paid leave.
Okay.
I'm not sure of anyone else in our employee family who would get 5 weeks of paid leave unaccrued for bereavement. I don't think there's anybody who would get anywhere
Well,
near that.
I mean, I know when we talked about before is a lot of the times that like PTO would kind of come into effect for this, which we don't accrue for the
Mhm,
PTO.
right.
So do you have an idea of like what a usual time off for bereavement people usually take or no?
Well, I mean, by policy, I think I think it's typically 3 days.
I mean, that's not a lot. I mean, if we were to only put 3 days for us, I think that would definitely be a little bit short of, because usually.
May I say something, since it's also my case?
yeah, well, I mean, as you know, we can,
Yeah.
appoint people, in a second.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry, were you done
Yes.
speaking?
So I just want to finish up, just, I mean. Sikander, do you think would be like amenable to adding in like,
I just wanna say something
Yeah,
first. I
okay.
mean, that when this agreement was reached, actually, the topic of bereavement came up. And
Mhm.
actually, UF's team said that actually it would come under even the existing provisions in a sort of a mental health kind of sense of being a serious health condition to the GA themselves.
I'm
Well,
not
that's different, yeah.
disputing that.
Right.
If someone acknowledge, if they have a mental health need because as a result that's connected to
Yeah.
a death, that's
Right.
we're not contesting that at all. That's a fundamentally
Right.
different thing.
Okay,
That's fundamentally different. If you're under a doctor's care as a result of some sort of medical stressful condition that may be connected to any sort of awful thing that happens in your life, that's a different matter altogether.
alright.
Okay,
Yeah.
and Jacob has his hand raised, so go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I wanted to make the same point, but in response to what Patrick just said, we have the video if you'd like to review it, but he didn't mention any type of needing a doctor's note, so to speak. In fact, he said, I would believe that that would fall under this type of thing. As in, like, kind of by de facto, one would assume that bereavement involves some degree of mental stress and therefore is covered.
Bereavement typically is given to employees so that they can attend memorial services and that sort of thing, which is why it's like 3 days leave.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even called like
Yeah.
funeral leave or, yeah.
Based on what I don't think that 5 assumes 6. I think it's possible that some people wind up at 6 as a result of 5, but I don't think that because 5 occurs, 6 is assumed. I don't think those are the same.
What I'm
No,
saying is when the CCL was accepted, the
That's
UF
what-
bargaining team made that implication.
Well,
So that is
implications-
what we're operating under.
It's not applied in that way anywhere else, so there must have been either misunderstanding or misinterpretation.
Or misrepresentation, full on. Yeah, oh, well, we can show you the video if you're actually
I
disputing
mean,
that.
Well, I mean, if you're
I have
making,
it pulled up if you'd
you're
like.
saying misrepresentation, then I mean, that's one
Yeah,
file like a
yeah,
ULP
file
or
ULP.
something, but I mean, that's, we're being, I mean, we're not, we're trying to be practical here. I mean, that's not like, if this typically, this is just very, very atypical to give 8 paid weeks of bereavement leave. We're not saying we're not agreeable to some extended portion, but there's a difference between a medical condition related to the death of a family member versus bereavement leave, which is usually taken to attend a funeral.
Okay, I just want to let Olga speak because she actually has like a personal thing that she wants to talk about related to this matter. And as you know, we can appoint someone to talk. No longer than 3 minutes, Olga.
Okay, so I'm a PhD student. I'm a first year
You
PhD
can
student.
yeah.
I'm a first year PhD student. That actually happened to me. So I come from the Republic of Georgia. For me, traveling requires almost 3 days. My father was hospitalized first. So he spent some days in the hospital, first in intensive care. So I immediately contacted the university. And then after some days, he actually passed away. I was me and my brother are the sole survivors. I was the one that was organizing the funeral. So it's not about attending something. It's about burying your parent, organizing everything, sorting out things at home. What is going to happen to the house? What is going to happen to the cat? How to pay all the bills, and et cetera. So obviously it requires more than just several days. It's actually the whole organization process. And then, of course, and then coming back. So for me later on and it's very interesting. So in the agreement, it says that a graduate assistant cannot be forced to perform duties in the case of death of immediate family member and in case of illness of the person.
Yeah.
But then the pay leave says only health conditions. I don't know what can be more intense than a health condition of your immediate family member that eventually the family member dies. Also, of course, 8 weeks is not necessary for this process, but it did require up to 3 weeks, including my father's hospitalization. As soon as it was all over, the next day, basically, I packed and I arrived. So what can be more intense? Obviously, any person that would lose a figure such as a parent, the last remaining parent, I lost both parents within 10 months, is distressed. but getting a certificate that I'm severely distressed to the point that I cannot take care of myself, those things happen. This is nothing wrong with the person, but it's also not, obviously, it's not to the point where I cannot take care of myself and getting certificate. There's obviously I'm almost incapacitated and medically sick. Why do I want also this on my file? It's obvious anyone would be distressed in this situation. So, and also, how do you deal with the fact that not everyone just dies like this? People first get sick and then they die. 8 weeks might not be necessary, but it's 8 weeks within 12 months period. And you might be taking separately 1 week there and 1 week there. And also, how do you deal with the situation if both parents die within a 12 months period? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I just want to add, this experience for me, to be honestly, has been dehumanizing. You bring out the best students from around the United States and from around the world, then work with excellent faculty, but then they feel dehumanized, as I felt. Sorry about that. Thanks.
No,
Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. And just to go off of that, like, you know, like she said, you know, the provision doesn't say anytime you take paid leave off, you're gonna get 8 weeks. Like, you know, it depends on the situation. It's just up to 8 weeks. So, I mean, I think the practicality of it is, I mean, it really just comes into the implementation of like whether we're gonna see like people, I guess.
I mean, I guess my question for
I'm
you
not
would
sure.
be, how would you envision this? I mean,
Right.
like, what, is it like a carve out? Like you're saying, oh, well, for this case, it's not 8 weeks. it's
I just
5
think
weeks.
I just think it's fundamentally different. I think there's a different, largely, this is modeled, it's not modeled exactly on, but it's modeled similar to FML, for which you guys don't qualify. It's similar to that.
Right.
FML is not a bereavement program. It's not. Now, is it a program for caring for an immediate family member? Absolutely.
Right.
Is there often a combination, as Olga said, a combination of someone getting very ill and you're taking care of them and then unfortunately they pass away? Absolutely. We've actually talked about the fact that there is sort of an unusual disconnect between those two processes.
Right.
Because it's not like the minute the person passes away, you can immediately go back to work because there are some things that need to occur. By the same token, I don't think that we're in a position of saying that just in and of having an immediate family member pass away, everyone is gonna need 8 weeks of paid leave. I just don't think that's necessarily the case. And the very first thing I said is, I don't know, and I would defer to Robert on this. I don't know if we want supervisors to be in a position of having to weigh an application based on the death of a family member, what that person is worthy of having. Because in most cases, they're gonna give them the maximum of whatever is requested. I think that's different than somebody passed away. I'm struggling, I'm going through, you know, I need time to adjust, I need time to deal with it. You know, I'm taking medical leave for myself as a result and connected to that issue.
Right.
I think that's different and we respect that.
Yeah, and that is different, and I think also too, I know you brought it up, but just to reiterate, just that the fact that we don't have the PTO, so we can't just offer. You know, we need to have that, if, for a bereavement clause for us, needs to have more time than just, you know, 3 days or whatever, because we don't have any other way. And to further say that, like, you know, I shouldn't, like, in case there's like a death of a family member and I am distressed and I am having some mental health, you know, issues because of that, I shouldn't, I don't think, I'm guessing in that scenario, like we would have to provide documentation of that. And you know, I think it's, you know, it's a death of an immediate family member is gonna be distressing regardless. So having to get like a medical note saying that saying that I am having issues because of the death in order to then get more leave under provision, 6 for the
Well,
serious health.
It's under review. We can request documentation. You don't have to provide it.
Okay.
And it's on the site.
Okay.
It says the university, we can.
But in the case that where you do request it, but then I have to, on top of everything else, get formal diagnoses for the distress and the trauma that I'm going through in order to obtain extra PT or extra paid leave, because instead, if, for example, if bereavement only allows, like, this as an example, for 3 days, then I would have to go and get a formal diagnosis for this trauma to access to 8 weeks, for example. So we don't want that to happen either. Like, it should be, it should be given that any death of an immediate family member, whether it was, sudden or kind of, you knew it was coming up, like, there should be some, leave just for that, not having to go through like, oh, a formal medical diagnosis just for me to.
And I think
to
that,
get there.
I think all of this is a reason why it doesn't belong under paid leave. It belongs as a separate section. And I think if we have some time to talk about it,
Yeah.
and think about what that would look like, then we can talk
But,
about it and then come
do-
back
do
to
you
you all
think-
with some thoughts on that. And
Okay,
I don't
Do-
think we've had time, like, just since you presented this,
Of
to think
course.
about that, but I think those are the types of things that
right,
make this a little bit different than
of course.
a medical condition, because
Yeah,
you could probably actually, what might need to happen is you have the bereavement leave or whatever you
Right.
call it, and then you would potentially separately apply for paid
Right.
leave. If, you
Right.
get through that period and you're really struggling, then you
Right.
could, then that might actually qualify for the paid leave.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you
yeah,
don't
and I
wanna
mean,
for- You don't wanna foreclose
right.
that either.
And there's also, well, and like I said, there's a lot of, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of ways that death could happen, and especially if it's sudden and you have to handle a lot, you could require even that entire 8 weeks to handle the estate and do that
So
stuff.
so I think that's a really
Yeah.
good point to bring up,
Yeah.
because I think that if you are the executor of an estate,
Right,
again, I think that's another issue
right,
that is also separate, whole and distinct, but should be considered in terms of how this has worked, because
Mm.
again, I would argue that if you have somebody who's not necessarily dealing with a medical condition and is forced to deal with administrative, whether it's probate or the executor of a will or
Right,
anything like that, I think that may be something the team is gonna talk about it, like Olivia said, but that may be something where we're like, okay, look, you've had we've given you the option, if you're having a mental health issue, obviously we respect
Right.
that. We have a provision for bereavement.
right,
If you have an extended need to go and take care of something else, maybe that's an unpaid situation. Others will protect your job and you can be gone. But if you have to be gone for an entire semester to deal with
right.
executing an estate, I mean, whether or not the universities just have to pay you to do that, that's different.
Well,
You
I
know- you know
mean,
what I'm saying? I just-
there is the
8 weeks
unpaid.
is not an entire semester.
Well, yeah, I mean, the full 8 weeks isn't an entire
Yeah.
semester, but also there is the unpaid extensions that we can request too, which may fall under.
Wait,
that.
so can I
That's what I'm-
just,
that's
can
what
I
I'm
just
talking about.
clarify some? So do you think that paid leave is in order for bereavement? I mean, like, is that?
I think we're willing to consider some form of paid leave for bereavement. I
Okay.
think
Maybe it's a
we are
separate
interested in
Okay.
some, and we will
Alright.
come back to you with some sort of,
Okay.
with something on that.
So something separate from the 8 weeks, but maybe in addition, you were considering or something?
We haven't had a chance to
Yeah,
talk
okay,
about it.
fine.
I think,
I think-
I don't think it
Yeah.
belongs in 8-3.
Yeah,
Okay,
kind of for all the
okay.
reasons that you explained.
Yeah.
I mean, for
actually-
us, the most important question is that is.
Yeah, and
Whether-
I think also just for your consideration when you go, cause I did also add it in as an exception to, like, if they're in their first semester, I
Mhm.
think that should still apply to bereavement in that case, like this, whatever decision you make, I think.
It's another, I think
Yeah.
that's like Olivia pointed out, I think that's
Yeah.
another reason why, rather than having included in here and making an exception, I think we just pull it out and have it be something.
Okay, alright.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, we'll come back to
Thinking
something
about the
on
best
this.
way to administer it, that's not.
Yeah.
Alright.
That's gonna be helpful.
All right, can we keep moving on though?
Yes.
So we're on, I think that looks like all the changes except in, you guys were good with 8-3C. It looks like you accepted. you
Yeah, we've
unpaid.
accepted,
Okay.
yeah, those are only two changes, everything else we've accepted, yeah.
All right.
Could you, I don't.
Just
have it in front of me.
acknowledging that the extension is unpaid. It was kind of ambiguous whether or not the extension was paid or unpaid
I think we had addressed that a
previously.
while back, right? No?
Yeah. Well,
That this is unpaid?
yeah,
I
not
just
paid
wanna- I
exception.
just
Yeah,
wanna-
that was like several.
Yeah, we're good, we're good. Yeah, we went through everything, like I said, the only two changes were for the bereavement, but everything else, I think we're good.
So 8-4, no change
Yep.
in 8-4, 8-5, okay.
That's all the same.
And you're good with adding internship? You were good with that one? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, great. Did you have another one?
Yeah. So, yeah, the last one we have is Article 9. So I think for 9.1, I think we didn't have any changes for that.
Okay,
9.2 similarly, so before you had kind of. You have, I mean, we've essentially accepted your deletions of our insertions in 9.2 and 9.3. Because you had kind of consolidated that in 9.4.
Mhm.
So we're okay with that. We just reinserted some of our previous language.
okay,
Essentially saying that in the classroom, so you define consistent with the exercise of academic responsibility. A GA is free to discuss all relevant matters in the classroom. And as I said, I mean, for us, the negative definition is also important. So essentially saying that in the classroom, irrelevant subject matter should not be confused with stating strong or controversial opinions that may offend a student's religious or political beliefs. And GAs are not precluded from alluding to persons or events that advance discussion, debate, and learning, even if some students fail to perceive a clear connection to the course of treatment. And similarly, in their research, GAs are permitted to maintain and publish their opinion and conclusion relevant to their domains. So essentially, yeah, just adding in the language that some of the language that we had previously had. And we're okay with deleting other aspects of it that you guys didn't want in there. And 9.5, I believe it should be 9.5 and 9.6.
you could get a couple of 9.5.
Yeah. So yeah, I think those are the same as in your proposal.
Okay,
Except for in 9.5, or then should be 9.6.
second 9.5, okay,
I looked at what you had told me to look at in
Yeah.
terms of US policy
Mhm.
on reporting in class. So it is true, reporting in class lecture is, yeah, there's no, I mean, they cannot be prohibited from recording it.
right,
But the class lecture, even the website said, does not include live sessions or really class discussions. So, for us, I mean, I think, we kind of edited our insertion here to say class discussion rather than class. Because that also is important for protecting the other students as well, not just,
Right.
not just.
And
the
class
instructor.
discussion would include like other presentations from students, things like that. too.
I gotcha,
Yeah,
I understand.
yeah,
And yeah, similarly with the actual law, which is cited,
Right,
it specifically mentions class lecture. And then I think you had, kind of reorganized, we just wanted to ensure that people wouldn't be disciplined for taking appropriate action. And I think we're okay with your reorganization of that down here. And then we reinserted, the provision about outside speech and political activities. I removed, the stuff about their fitness to serve or whatever. I also agree, we have no, kind of interest in defining what that would mean. I think it should just be an unqualified, GAs have the right to speak.
yeah.
And they shouldn't fear institutional discipline.
Just
because-
having that enshrined in our contract, so.
What about like hate speech?
Well, that's what I was trying to address with the other stuff, but, I mean, I think that would fall under other.
Like misconduct.
Yeah, I mean, like, if they're doing
yeah.
something illegal, if their speech is illegal speech, right? That's a
Right.
different.
Or goes against like any type of discrimination policies, that's all handled through the disciplinary
So
act.
you're recognizing there are limitations on speech.
I actually tried to do that in my previous proposal, and you guys said that you were not interested in establishing that standard. So I just figured that's fine, like, I'm not interested in either. I mean, for us, what's important is that you have the positive freedom to speak.
Right,
And yes, of course, there are certain forms of speech which are illegal. And that would be dealt with as any kind of transgression
Right.
of the law would be dealt with.
and, yeah, and also protect like personal like speech of the DA, like outside, you know, like this in their personal life too, just so this and making sure that like, you know, stating that that's separate and they can't be disciplined for, you know, their activities as just a citizen of the United States for their speech versus, or, you know, whether type of political affiliations or anything else they're doing.
Or even a non-citizen of the United,
Or even, yes,
a resident of the United.
yes, exactly. Yeah, because I mean, we already have all of the processes to handle disciplinary for misconduct, for, you know, we have the whole discrimination policy, you know, which we has a lot of stuff in it that, you know, we've been going back and forth on, like, that still all applies, and, you know, if any of that speech, you know, it puts, you know, conflicts with any of those other articles, then they go through the disciplinary process, so, you know, that's already.
Political activities covered under our discrimination provision already, so it's not something that I'm suggesting that we're trying to.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
quash.
no, yeah, of course.
Something we recognize
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably stated in different ways a few times, like around for protecting speed, but this is where the main definition.
I don't think I have any questions. Any questions? All right. Okay. Did we want to talk about sessions beyond what we previously had kind of discussed? I mean, we don't have to do that right this second. We can talk about it over email if you want, but
Sure.
I don't know, like, when you feel like, is your team comfortable continuing to meet? I assume some of you are probably gonna travel, maybe go
Yeah.
away. I mean, we may also have some conflicts.
Yeah, I mean, why don't you email us sometimes during the week, that would work for you to meet and. But yeah, I think we definitely need to keep meeting over the summer.
Right, yeah. I just didn't know what y'all's availability was gonna be.
I
mean,
mean,
I'm
I think
planning
it will
here.
be, you know, for different people
Yeah.
spotty at different points,
Right,
but I
right.
think someone will be at the bargaining.
Yeah,
table.
we'll
Okay.
have some,
Yeah,
we'll have
yeah,
some
yeah.
bit.
And then just FYI, I'm hopeful that we will have representatives from our benefits team here next week.
Awesome.
And I hope the plan is, I still have a couple of things that I have to get through and make sure they're okay. I'm hoping to give at least a partial presentation on insurance next week. That's the
Okay.
tentative plan.
Okay.
So I'm not promising that, but I've met with the consultants, I've met with the benefits team, like,
Awesome.
I think we're hopeful that I'll be able to present something for you next week.
We're looking forward to it, yeah.
Yeah, just a minor comment, concerning the, again, briefly. Article 8 of the present agreement, I can do the present agreement, states that the engineer can be forced to work for a number of reasons, including the death of a family member. Then when we look at paid leave, the whole list there, that there isn't. But then we need to remember those 8 weeks, they include all of these things. God forbid somebody has moved to second during the year, but it's no more than 8 weeks, so cumulative elements of it. And practically speaking, from my experience, there is no way a GA would be wanting to take 8 weeks of leave because of the pressure of university, because there are so many things to do. In my case, for instance, I had to catch up on classes, which I did successfully, in parallel with the research. So, like, it's not kind of a vacation period, it's very intense. All right, so the moment you can, you're back. And the less time you're motivated actually to spend less time on it because of the pressure at university and then that's really. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry. My starting point?
All right, but
yeah.
next week we do have a
Wait,
session,
so-
right?
Yeah, we have a session next week and I think,
May 2nd.
yeah, I think we should probably at that point sort out like
Make
kind
sure
of
we have a
times and
plan,
stuff like
okay.
that, yeah.
Yeah, I'll shoot you guys an email, but let's definitely shore it up before the end of next session.
Yeah.
Make sure we have at least the next couple of weeks kind of laid out.
Right, right.
And if we don't have any availability, at least let's both acknowledge that we don't have any, but getting some on the
Right.
calendar would be, I don't want to wait until we're not
Yeah.
meeting before we do that.
Yeah, I mean, if we need to take a 2-week break or something, that'd be
It's
fine.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume everyone's gonna be traveling intermittently somewhat over the summer. Everyone's gonna
Right.
take a break.
All right.
All right, thanks,
Sounds
guys.
good. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Open up the, stop the recording.
Yeah.